That morning, no one expected a single act of quiet resolve to redefine what service truly meant in the ranks. What began as a standard patrol in the shadowed valleys of a forward operating base would become a thread in the fabric of one soldier's unspoken legacy, and a test of compassion amid the unyielding demands of duty. The air in the Hindu Kush was crisp at dawn, carrying the faint scent of pine resin and diesel from the idling Humvees. Captain Elena Vasquez adjusted the strap of her rucksack, her boots sinking slightly into the gravel path that led from the barracks to the motor pool. At 34, she moved with the precision of someone who had long ago traded personal milestones for mission clocks. Her uniform, olive drab and starched, bore the insignia of the 101st Airborne Division's medical detachment, a silver caduceus on her shoulder, a reminder of her role as a combat medic. But it was Rex, her German Shepherd K9 partner, who completed the silhouette. His black and tan coat gleaming under the rising sun, ears perked as he trotted at her heel, leash loose in her gloved hand. "Easy, boy," Elena murmured, her voice low and steady, the kind honed from years of issuing calm reassurances in chaos. Rex's nose twitched, scanning the perimeter as they passed the chain-link fence topped with concertina wire. He was more than a detection dog. Trained for explosives and search and rescue, he had become her silent confidant in the isolation of deployment. No birthdays marked on the calendar for her, hadn't since her commissioning at West Point 12 years prior. Duty didn't pause for cake or candles, it demanded focus, and Elena had given it without reservation. The base hummed with the rhythm of reveille. Soldiers in formation snapped to attention as Sergeant Major Harlan barked orders from the raised platform near the flagpole. "Platoon, at 10 hut!" His voice cut through the morning mist like a blade. Elena joined the line, Rex settling beside her with a soft huff, his eyes fixed on the colors being raised, red, white, and blue climbing the pole with a faint creak of rope. Harlan's gaze swept the ranks, lingering on her for a beat longer than necessary. He was old school, a lifer from the Gulf War era, who viewed the integration of K9 units into medical ops as an unnecessary complication. "Vasquez," he called after the pledge, "your team's up for the village sweep today. Intel says possible IEDs in the Wadi. Keep it tight, no heroics." "Yes, sir," Elena replied, her salute crisp, chin level. She felt the weight of his scrutiny. Rumors had circulated about her pushing for more humanitarian aid runs, bending protocol to treat locals beyond the wire. But orders were orders, and she executed them with the discipline that had earned her the Bronze Star 2 tours back. The convoy assembled under the watchful eyes of the watchtower sentries. Elena climbed into the lead MRAP, Rex leaping in after her, his paws scraping the metal floor. The vehicle smelled of gun oil and stale MREs, the dashboard radios crackling with pre-mission checks. "Alpha Team, this is Bravo Actual," came the voice of Lieutenant Ramirez, her platoon leader, over the net. "Route confirmed, 5 clicks to the village, then house to house for civvy welfare check. Vasquez, you're on point for any medicals. Eyes sharp." "Roger that." Elena keyed her mic, her hand absently stroking Rex's flank as the engine growled to life. The wheels churned dust as they rolled out the gate, the base shrinking in the rear view, tents flapping in the wind, a distant call to prayer echoing from the hills. She checked her kit, tourniquets, morphine syrettes, bandages sealed against the grit, personal items. A single photo tucked in her breast pocket, her parents at her academy graduation, smiles frozen in time. No mention of her own birthday next week. It would pass like any other day, logged in the duty roster. The road wound through terraced fields, the mountains looming like silent judges. Rex grew alert, whining softly as they neared the village, a cluster of mud-brick homes huddled against a dry riverbed. Children peeked from doorways, their faces smudged with dirt, waving tentatively at the armored beasts rumbling past. Elena scanned through her scope, heart rate steady at 60 beats per minute. This was routine. Assess needs, distribute rations, pull out before dusk. But as the team dismounted, fanning out with weapons at low ready, a cry pierced the air. It came from a narrow alley, sharp and desperate, a mother's voice pleading in Pashto. Ramirez signaled halt, and Elena moved forward, Rex straining at the leash. "Stay close," she whispered to him. Rounding the corner, they found the source. 3 children, no older than 8, clustered around a fourth, a boy limp on the ground, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle from a rock slide or fall. The mother knelt beside him, tears carving tracks in the dust on her cheeks, while the others clung to her abaya, eyes wide with fear. "Medic!" Ramirez called, but Elena was already there, dropping her pack and kneeling. Rex sat alert, his nose working the air, detecting no threat beyond the metallic tang of blood. "It's okay," Elena said softly, though her dari was limited. She relied on gestures, her hands gentle as she assessed the injury. Compound fracture, possible internal bleeding. The boy whimpered, his siblings hovering, one girl clutching a frayed doll. Harlan's voice crackled over the radio from base. "Team, keep it to basics. No prolonged engagement. Extract if it heats up." But as Elena stabilized the leg with a splint, the children watched her every move, their fear easing into something like trust. The girl with the doll reached out, touching Rex's ear tentatively. The dog didn't flinch, leaning into the contact with a soft thump of his tail. By the time the medevac chopper's rotors thumped in the distance, the sun had climbed higher, baking the earth. Elena helped load the boy, the mother murmuring thanks through an interpreter. The other children trailed them to the convoy, waving as the team pulled away. In the rear view, Elena saw them still standing there, small figures against the vast landscape. Back at base, debrief was brisk in the ops tent, maps pinned under red lights. Harlan reviewed the footage from helmet cams. "Solid work, but Vasquez, you lingered. Protocol says 5 minutes max for non-threat med support." His tone was even, but the implication hung. Push too far, and it blurs the line. "Understood, Sergeant Major," Elena said, meeting his eyes. Rex lay at her feet, oblivious to the undercurrent. She didn't argue. Explanations were for after-action reports, not here. But as she walked to the kennels that evening, the weight of the day settled. Those children, their trusting gazes, the way the girl had smiled at Rex, stirred something dormant. Duty had called her to the wire, but compassion had kept her there a moment longer. In the quiet of the enclosure, Elena filled Rex's bowl, the kibble rattling like distant gunfire. He ate methodically, then nudged her hand for a pat. "Good boy," she whispered, scratching behind his ears. Outside, the base lights flickered on, another night in the routine. No one knew her birthday approached, unmarked and uncelebrated. Yet in the shadows of her mind, the children's faces lingered, a subtle fracture in the armor of discipline. The days blurred into a cadence of patrols and post-mission briefs, the Hindu Kush's jagged peaks a constant backdrop to the base's unyielding rhythm. Elena Vasquez rose before dawn each morning. Her internal clock synced to the faint glow of the horizon filtering through her tent flap. She laced her boots with practiced efficiency, the leather creaking softly in the chill air, then clipped Rex's lead. The kennel run smelled of damp earth and straw, Rex's paws padding alongside her as they joined the formation for physical training. Push-ups in the gravel, sprints along the perimeter fence. The burn in her muscles was a familiar anchor, grounding her against the uncertainties beyond the wire. Sergeant Major Harlan presided over PT like a drill instructor from another era, his whistle piercing the air as squads rotated through obstacle courses. "Move like you mean it, soldiers. The enemy doesn't wait for you to catch your breath." His eyes, sharp under the brim of his patrol cap, tracked Elena as she scaled the rope climb, Rex waiting at the base with unwavering patience. She dropped down, breath steady, and saluted the end of the session. Harlan pulled her aside afterward, his voice low amid the dispersing ranks. "Vasquez, that village run good instincts, but you're not running a charity. Command's eyes are on aid distribution. Stick to the script." "Affirmative, Sergeant Major," she replied, her posture ramrod straight. Internally the words chafed. The boy's injury replayed in her mind, the way his siblings had hovered, their small hands gripping her sleeve as she worked. But doubt had no place in the chain of command. She reported to the medical bay, logging supplies, IV fluids low, antibiotics rationed for troop needs first. Rex curled under her desk, his ears flicking at the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. That afternoon, Lieutenant Ramirez briefed the next stop in the tactical room, a plywood-walled space thick with the scent of marker ink on dry erase boards. Maps of the Wadi region sprawled across the table, red pins marking hot zones. Intel's picking up chatter, possible displaced families moving through the valley. "We're inserting for a recon and welfare check. Vasquez, you'll handle any evac needs, but priority is threat assessment. No detours." The team loaded out at dusk, the MRAP's tires crunching over rocky outcrops as stars pricked the deepening sky. Radio chatter filled the cab. "All stations, maintain visual on the ridgeline. Winds light, visibility good." Elena monitored vitals on her tablet, Rex's head resting on her boot, his warmth a steady presence. The convoy halted at a makeshift crossing, where the dry riverbed widened into a basin dotted with acacia scrub. Dismounting, the squad fanned out, NVGs casting the world in green hues. It was Rex who alerted first. A low growl rumbling from his chest, nose pointed toward a cluster of boulders. Elena followed his lead, signaling Ramirez with a hand gesture. "Possible contact," she whispered into her mic. They advanced cautiously, weapons disciplined at the low ready. What they found wasn't an ambush, but desperation. A group of villagers, perhaps a dozen, huddled in the shadows. Women and children, their faces gaunt under shawls, with a few elders clutching bundles of salvaged cloth. No men in sight, likely scattered by recent skirmishes. A young woman, her abaya torn at the hem, stepped forward, speaking rapidly in Pashto. The interpreter, Corporal Singh, translated haltingly, "They fled a raid 2 days ago. Children are sick, fever, no water." Elena's gaze swept the group, landing on 3 small figures pressed against the woman's side. Recognition hit like a gut punch. The girl from the alley, her frayed doll still clutched tight, flanked by 2 younger siblings. The boy she'd splinted was absent, likely en route to a field hospital, but these were his family, or kin, bound by the village's fragile ties. Ramirez assessed the scene, his flashlight beam cutting through the dark. "Limited resources. We can spare some canteens and MREs, but extractions off the table. Base policy, no non-combatants unless critical." Harlan's standing orders echoed in Elena's mind. Minimize exposure, extract clean. Yet as the girl met her eyes, a faint smile breaking through the exhaustion, Elena felt the pull. One child, a toddler no more than 4, coughed wetly, his cheeks flushed under the dirt. "Permission to treat on site, sir?" Elena asked, keeping her tone neutral. Ramirez hesitated, glancing at the ridgeline, where shadows shifted like threats. 2 minutes, Vasquez. Make it count." She knelt, unpacking her kit with swift precision, the metallic click of latches, loud in the quiet. Rex positioned himself between her and the group, a living barrier, his stance alert but non-threatening. The children gathered closer, curiosity overriding fear. Elena checked the toddler first, dehydration evident, pulse thready. She administered oral rehydration salts, her gloved hands steady as she coaxed him to sip from a squeeze pouch. "Easy now," she murmured. though the words were for herself as much as him. The girl helped, holding her doll as a distraction, her tiny fingers brushing Elena's arm. Singh relayed the mother's gratitude. She says you saved her nephew. Blessings on you and your dog. Rex accepted a tentative pat from the girl, his tail giving a single wag. But as Elena wrapped a fever-reducer dose, Ramirez's voice cut in. Time's up. Mount up. Movement on the flank. The order hung heavy. Leaving them here meant risking exposure to the elements, or worse, patrols that didn't distinguish. Elena's mind raced. Protocol screamed pull back, but the children's eyes, trusting and vulnerable, demanded more. She slipped an extra med pack into the mother's hands, whispering to Singh, "Tell her to follow the riverbed at first light. There's a safe house 3 clicks east. Our allies mark it with blue flags." Ramirez shot her a look as they withdrew, but said nothing in the moment. The convoy rumbled back under cover of night, the basin fading into blackness. Debrief in the ops tent was tense, Harlan reviewing logs under the harsh glare of a desk lamp. "Vasquez, you exceeded the window, and that extra kit, unaccounted for in inventory." "It was a judgment call, Sergeant Major," Elena stated, her voice level, Rex at her side like a sentinel. "The fever cases could spread if untreated. Containment's part of the mission." Harlan's jaw tightened, but he nodded curtly. "Log it. Next time, clear it first." The room emptied, leaving Eleanor to file the report, her pen scratching across the form in the dim light. Outside, the wind howled through the tents, carrying the distant bark of other K9s. Rex nudged her knee, sensing the unrest. She scratched his ruff. The simple act a tether, word spread subtly through the barracks that night, whispers of the medic who bent rules for kids. No fanfare, just nods in the chow line. Elena lay in her bunk, staring at the canvas ceiling, the photo of her parents a weight in her pocket. Her birthday loomed 2 days away, another unmarked entry in the deployment log. But the children's faces, illuminated by her flashlight, lingered like embers. Duty had drawn the line. Compassion had smudged it. In the quiet hours, she wondered what ripples her choice would send through the rigid currents of command. The base stirred under a slate-grey sky the next morning, the first hints of monsoon season threading rain through the mountain passes. Elena Vasquez methodized her routine with mechanical precision, folding her poncho liner over her cot before clipping Rex's lead. The kennel air hung heavy with the scent of wet fur and oiled rifles, Rex shaking droplets from his coat as they stepped into the downpour. PT was abbreviated, squads huddling under overhangs while Harlan's voice boomed from the covered platform. "Form up! Rain doesn't stop the mission. Adapt and overcome." Elena's boots squelched in the mud, her uniform clinging damply as she led Rex through the paces, his paws churning divots in the earth. Debrief from the previous night's recon lingered in the air like humidity. Ramirez caught her eye during chow, his tray balanced with rehydrated eggs and flatbread. "That call you made, smart, Vasquez, but Harlan's logging it for review. Command's tightening on aid protocols after the last incident up north." He kept his tone neutral, fork scraping the plate, but the subtext was clear. Her actions were under scrutiny. Elena nodded, sipping black coffee that tasted of tin. "Understood, sir. Just doing the job." Rex sat at attention beside the bench, ignoring the scraps tossed his way by passing privates. Loyalty like his required no words, only presence. The afternoon brought a shift in ops, a humanitarian convoy rerouted through the valley, carrying medical supplies for a neutral clinic 2 clicks from the village. Elena's team was slotted for escort, her role expanded to on-site triage if needed. As they prepped the MRAPs in the motor pool, tires hissing on wet concrete, Harlan approached. His rain jacket zipped to the collar. "Vasquez, your point on the clinic handoff. No side trips. Stick to the manifest. Intel's quiet, but quiet means watchful." His gaze flicked to Rex, who met it steadily, unblinking. "That dog's knows better than most. Use it." "Roger, Sergeant Major," Elena replied, securing her medkit in the vehicle's rack. The convoy rolled out under a steady drizzle, wipers slapping rhythmically against the windshield. Radio checks crackled. "All elements, maintain interval. Blue route, eyes on thermal." The road transformed into a slurry of mud and rock, the Hindu Kush's ridges blurring in the mist. Elena monitored Rex in the jump seat, his ears pricked at every jolt, nose questing through the vents for threats hidden in the downpour. They reached the clinic, a squat concrete bunker fortified with sandbags, as thunder rumbled distant. Afghan National Army personnel greeted them at the gate, rifles slung low, their uniforms sodden. The handoff was procedural. Crates of bandages, antibiotics, and saline stacked on pallets, signatures exchanged under a canvas awning that flapped in the wind. But as Elena oversaw the unload, a familiar figure emerged from the clinic's shadowed doorway. The young woman from the basin, her abaya draped over a sling supporting her arm. Behind her trailed the 3 children, the girl with the doll, now cleaner, but still clutching it like a talisman. Her younger sister, eyes bright despite the chill, and a boy, perhaps 6, peering warily from her side. The girl spotted Elena first. Breaking into a tentative wave that drew the woman's attention, she approached, gesturing animatedly to Corporal Singh, who translated, "She thanks you for the kit. It saved the little one's fever. Your directions led them here safely." Elena knelt to the children's level, rain beading on her helmet brim, Rex settling beside her with a soft whine of recognition. The girl reached out, patting his damp flank, her siblings following suit. Their hands were small, tentative, but the trust in their eyes cut through the protocol haze. "They're safe now?" Elena asked Singh, her voice low. The woman nodded, murmuring words that Singh rendered as, "The clinic doctor says the boy, your patient, will walk again. They want to give something back." From her pocket, she produced a woven bracelet, threads of dyed wool knotted simply, and pressed it into Elena's gloved palm. The children clustered closer, the boy whispering something that elicited a soft laugh from his sister. Singh hesitated before adding, "They ask about your dog. Does he have a name? And when is your special day? They heard from the village elder about American helpers' birthdays." Elena's pulse quickened, the question landing like an unexpected round. She hadn't shared that detail. It must have surfaced in the whispers of aid workers. "His name's Rex," she said, forcing steadiness. "And my day. It's soon, but we don't mark it here." The girl beamed, tugging at the doll as if sharing a secret, while Ramirez signaled from the convoy, "Wrap it up, rain's worsening." Harlan's voice cut over the net. "Team, secure and mount, no lingering storm front inbound." But as Elena rose, the children tugged at her sleeve, their pleas translated in fragments. A drawing, a song, something to say thank you. The moral pull tightened. Protocol demanded departure, yet leaving them felt like severing a fragile line. "1 minute," she radioed, pulling a spare energy bar from her pouch and dividing it among them. Rex leaned into their touches, his tail thumping mud onto the ground. The woman pressed a folded paper into Elena's hand, a child's sketch, crude lines of a dog, and a soldier under a sun. "For your day," Singh relayed. Ramirez's impatience grew, his silhouette tense by the MRAP. "Vasquez now." She complied, saluting the group with a nod, the bracelet slipping into her pocket like contraband. The convoy churned away, clinic shrinking in the mirrors amid sheets of rain. Back at base, the debrief tent reeked of wet canvas and boot polish. Harlan reviewed the logs, his finger tracing the timeline. Handoff clean, but that interaction, unlogged contact. Vasquez, explain. "Gratitude from prior evac. Sergeant Major," Elena stated, posture unyielding. "No security breach. They were clinic patients." Harlan's eyes narrowed, but he grunted approval. "Document it, and keep personal ties out. Emotions cloud judgment." The team dispersed, Elena heading to the medical bay to dry her gear, Rex trailing with a shake that sprayed water across the tile. That evening, in the dim glow of her tent, she unfolded the sketch. Stick figures labelled in halting English. Friend Eleanor, Rex, happy day. The children's gesture pierced the routine, a quiet defiance of her self-imposed isolation. Her birthday was tomorrow, unmarked as always, but now it carried weight, ripples from choices made beyond the wire. Rex curled at her feet, his breathing even, a reminder that bonds formed in silence could outlast orders. Outside, the rain drummed on, washing the base clean, while in the distance the clinic lights flickered like unspoken promises. Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far stories of courage and integrity can reach. The dawn broke with a reluctant light, filtering through the tent's mesh screen in hazy shafts that caught the dust motes dancing in Elena Vasquez's quarters. She stirred at 0500 hours, the habit ingrained deeper than sleep, her hand reaching automatically for the alarm's off switch before it could shrill. Rex lifted his head from the foot of her cot, his dark eyes reflecting the pale glow, a low rumble in his throat as if acknowledging the new day. Elena swung her legs over the edge, boots thudding softly on the packed dirt floor, the chill seeping through her socks. 35 today, though the number held no ceremony, just another rotation in the deployment calendar, logged without fanfare. She dressed methodically, trousers tucked into boots, blouse buttoned to the collar, the caduceus pin glinting as she affixed it. The sketch from the children lay folded on her footlocker, its edges softened by the night's humidity. Happy day. The scrawled words mocked the routine. She tucked it away, out of sight, and clipped Rex's lead. The bass outside hummed with the first stirrings, generators coughing to life, the distant clatter of mess hall trays. Rain from the previous night had left puddles mirroring the overcast sky, and Elena's steps splashed faintly as she led Rex to the kennel run for his morning circuit. PT formation assembled under the overhang of the motor pool, squads in waterproof gear, breaths visible in the crisp air. Sergeant Major Harlan paced the front, his voice carrying over the patter of residual drops from the eaves. Listen up, monsoon's turning the trails to slop. Today's run is modified, but standards don't bend. Vasquez, your team's on standby for the clinic resupply after. His eyes met hers briefly, the review from yesterday's interaction unspoken but present in the set of his jaw. Elena saluted with the platoon, falling into step as they jogged the perimeter, Rex trotting parallel outside the chain, his paws silent on the gravel. The run ended with stretches in the mud-slicked yard, muscles aching in that disciplined burn Elena welcomed as clarity. Chow followed, oatmeal congealing in her bowl, coffee steaming from a dented mug. Ramirez joined her table, Rex settling at her feet with a contented sigh. "Quiet morning," the lieutenant said, stirring his ration pack. Harlan mentioned the clinic handoff went smooth, but he's flagging aid logs for audit. Your encounters with the locals, keep them documented. Brass wants metrics, not stories. "Affirmative, sir," Elena replied, her spoon scraping the bowl's edge. The audit loomed like a shadow, her extra medkits, the unlogged directions to the safe house, small infractions that could compound under scrutiny, but the children's sketch burned in her pocket, a talisman of intent over error. Duty prescribed precision, compassion had blurred the lines, and now the institution's gaze sharpened. The resupply convoy prepped mid-morning, crates of formula and vaccines stacked under tarps in the MRAP beds. Elena checked Rex's vest, the K9 harness fitted snug over his shoulders, his nose already questing the air for anomalies. The team mounted up, engines idling with a low growl that vibrated through the seats. "Blue route confirmed," Ramirez radioed from the lead vehicle. "Eyes on the Wadi, flood risk from the rains." The gates swung open, and they rolled into the mist-shrouded valley, tires churning through rivulets that carved new paths in the earth. The clinic appeared sooner than expected, its sandbagged walls glistening under the drizzle. Afghan medics waved them through, and the unload proceeded with clipped efficiency. Pallets shifted by forklifts humming in the yard, signatures inked on manifests. Elena oversaw the medical transfer, her clipboard a shield against the persistent wet. Rex paced at her heel, alert to the unfamiliar scents wafting from the open wards. Antiseptic mingled with the earthy tang of cooking fires. It was during the final crate that the children emerged again, this time with purpose. The girl led, her doll tucked under one arm, flanked by her siblings and two more from the village group. Their faces scrubbed and abayas mended. The young woman followed, carrying a cloth bundle, her expression a mix of resolve and caution. They approached the perimeter, halting at the chain-link fence that separated the clinic grounds from the convoy area. The girl called out in Pashto, waving a colorful scrap paper folded into a makeshift flag. Corporal Singh, interpreting from the tailgate, caught Elena's eye. "They insist on seeing you, Mom. Something about a gift for your day." Elena's stomach tightened. Word had spread further than she'd anticipated, perhaps through the clinic staff or the Elders Network. Ramirez glanced over from the manifest, his brow furrowing. "Vasquez, keep it brief. We're not here for social calls." She nodded, signaling Rex to stay as she approached the fence, boots sinking into the soft ground. The children pressed close to the wire, their small hands gripping the links, eyes bright with excitement. The girl thrust the paper through, another drawing, this one more elaborate, a circle of figures around a table, stick arms raised with "Happy Birthday, Friend" lettered unevenly at the bottom. The bundle from the woman unfolded to reveal flatbreads, wrapped in cloth, still warm, scented with cumin and the faint sweetness of dates. "For you and Rex," Singh translated, the woman's voice steady. "The children planned it, saved from rations. They say you gave them hope. Now they give back." Elena's throat constricted, the gesture piercing the armor of protocol. Rex whined from his post, sensing the shift, his tail flicking once. The boy from the group piped up, his words tumbling, a song, simple and off-key, about a kind soldier and her dog. The other children joined, their voices rising in the rain-damp air, drawing glances from the team. Curious, then wary, Harlan's voice crackled over the net from base. "Status, Alpha. Timeline slipping." Ramirez stepped forward, his presence a reminder of the line. "Appreciate the thought, kids, but we've got to roll. Vasquez, wrap it." Yet as Elena accepted the bread, murmuring thanks through Singh, the moral tension coiled tighter. Accepting this publicly blurred the professional veil. Refusing it dismissed the fragile bridge she'd helped build. The children's faces, expectant and pure, demanded acknowledgement. Duty versus the human cost of indifference. She knelt briefly, breaking a piece of the bread and offering it to Rex, who sniffed and took it gently, eliciting giggles. "Tell them thank you," she said to Singh, her voice low. "From me and Rex, this means more than they know." The girl beamed, pressing her palm to the fence in a makeshift high five that Elena mirrored through the wire. But as the team loaded the last crates, a clinic medic approached Ramirez, murmuring about the children's status, refugee papers pending, safe for now, but vulnerable to relocation orders. The convoy pulled away under gathering clouds, the clinic's gate clanging shut behind them. In the MRAP, Elena sat silent, the bundle in her lap, Rex's head on her knee. Radio chatter filled the void. "All clear. Returning to base." But the incident replayed, the public exchange, witnessed by half the squad. Whispers would follow, testing the chain's tolerance for personal entanglements. Debrief in the ops tent was procedural, Harlan's logbook open under the lamp's glow. Handoff complete, but Vasquez, that fence line meet, unsecured contact, potential OPSEC risk, explain the protocol breach. His tone was measured, but the weight pressed. "Gratitude from prior patients, Sergeant Major," Elena replied, standing at ease, Rex flanking her. No intel exchanged. It built rapport for future ops. Trust facilitates access. Harlan paused, pen hovering, then noted it curtly. Log the details. Commands auditing all aid interactions. Your patterns flagged. One more undocumented and its formal review. The tent emptied, leaving Eleanor to file the report, her handwriting precise despite the knot in her chest. Outside, the rain resumed, drumming on the canvas like impatient fingers. In her quarters, she shared the bread with Rex, the date's sweetness a rare indulgence. The drawings joined her parents' photo, a quiet collection of vulnerabilities. Her birthday, once invisible, now echoed in children's voices, a defiance of isolation that could cost her standing. Yet in the dim light, with Rex's warmth at her side, she felt the stir of legacy, one act of compassion rippling toward unforeseen reform, even as the system closed in. The afternoon sun pierced the thinning clouds, casting elongated shadows across the base's motor pool as the convoy returned from the clinic. Elena Vasquez gripped the MRAP's handhold, the vehicle's sway sinking with the low rumble of its engine, while Rex shifted at her feet, his damp fur brushing her boot. The bundle of flatbread rested on the dash, its cloth wrapper spotted with rain, a tangible reminder of the fence line exchange that now felt like a fault line in her discipline. Radio static crackled intermittently. Base, Alpha Actual, ETA 10 mics, all green. Ramirez's voice held its usual even cadence, but Elena caught the sidelong glance he directed her way, his fingers drumming the wheel. Back at the compound, the team dismounted amid the squeal of brakes and the splash of tires in residual puddles. Soldiers hauled gear to the armory, rifles slung over shoulders, while the scent of wet asphalt mingled with the sharp tang of gun cleaner from the maintenance bays. Elena led Rex to the kennel, his leash taut as he shook off the last of the moisture, paws leaving muddy prints on the concrete path. Steady. Boy, she murmured, unlatching the gate. Inside, the enclosure smelled of straw and metal bowls, Rex settling into his run with a contented huff, his eyes following her through the chain link. Harlan waited in the ops tent, his silhouette framed against the tactical map pinned to the wall, red markers denoting patrol routes like veins in the Hindu Kush. The air was thick with the hum of a portable heater pushing back the damp chill. Vasquez, he said without preamble, gesturing to a folding chair. Ramirez lingered by the flap, arms crossed, the debrief log open on the table. Sit. We need to address the clinic interaction. Eleanor took the seat, posture erect, hands folded on her knees. Standard posture for inquiry. Drilled into her at Fort Campbell. Rex's absence felt like a void. His presence always steadied the variables. Sergeant Major, she acknowledged, meeting his gaze. Harlan's face was a mask of procedural neutrality, but the furrow in his brow spoke of accumulated reports, the village splint, the basin med kit, now this public gesture from the children. Walk me through it, Harlan continued, flipping pages in the log. Handoff was on schedule until the fence contact. Witnesses, Singh, 2 privates, report gifts exchanged. Bread, drawings, and singing. That's not rapport, that's entanglement. Command's aid policy is clear, no personal exchanges. It opens doors to manipulation, intel leaks. Ramirez interjected, his tone measured. The kids were patients from your prior runs. Gratitude's natural, but in front of the squad. It looks like favoritism. Brass is auditing all med logs post the Northern Aid scandal. Unauthorized drops led to a reprimand up the chain. Your patterns drawing eyes. Elena's pulse remained steady, trained to hold under fire, but the words landed like incoming rounds. The children's faces flashed. The girls' wave, the boys' off-key tune, their small hands through the wire. It wasn't manipulation. It was humanity piercing the wire's barrier. "It was brief, sir," she stated, voice level. "No classified info shared. The clinic staff vouched. These are vetted refugees. Building trust there eases future access for welfare checks. Denying them would erode that." Harlan leaned forward, elbows on the table, the wood creaking under his weight. "Trust is earned through protocol, not gifts. You've logged 3 unapproved interactions in 2 weeks. The audit's flagging it as a potential violation. Article 92, dereliction if it compromises readiness." He paused, eyes narrowing. "And today, your birthday, words circulating from the interpreter, personal details like that? They don't belong beyond the wire. It humanizes you, makes you a target." The revelation hit harder than expected. Singh must have overheard her mention to the children, or perhaps the clinic elder had pieced it from deployment chatter. Elena's jaw tightened imperceptibly, the sketch in her pocket a sudden weight. 35 years, unmarked until these displaced lives insisted otherwise. Duty had always sufficed. No celebrations. No distractions, but compassion had invited this scrutiny, rippling through the ranks like a misfired round. "Understood, Sergeant Major," she replied, chin level. "I'll amend the logs, note it as rapport building, no further exchanges." Internally, the dilemma coiled. Obedience meant reinforcing the wall, potentially stranding those children in bureaucratic limbo. Conscience urged documentation of their needs, pushing for expanded aid protocols that could protect more. Harlan nodded curtly, closing the log. "Formal review tomorrow. Command staff, prepare your statement. Dismissed." Ramirez followed her out, the tent flap slapping shut behind them. The base evening routine unfolded, mess call echoing, lights snapping on along the perimeter. The distant whir of a drone launch. Elena collected Rex from the kennel, his tail thumping as he pressed against her leg, sensing the tension in her stride. In the medical bay, she updated the inventory sheet under the fluorescent buzz. Pen scratching against paper, extra kits accounted, interactions cross-referenced. The bay smelled of iodine and latex gloves, shelves lined with sealed packs that represented lives rationed by policy. A private from her squad paused at the door, helmet under arm. "Heard about the kids, ma'am. That was real. Harlan chewing you out?" "Standard procedure," Elena said, not looking up. "Focus on your quals." He nodded and left, but the exchange lingered. Whispers spreading, testing loyalties within the platoon. Loyalty to chain of command, or to the medic who blurred lines for the vulnerable? Night fell with a chill wind scouring the tents, carrying the faint lowing of goats from a nearby village. Elena lay on her cot, Rex curled at the foot, his breathing a rhythmic anchor. The drawings and bread sat on her footlocker, illuminated by a tactical light's glow, symbols of a birthday reclaimed. Yet now ammunition in an institutional reckoning. Sleep evaded her, mind mapping the review. Defend the actions as mission essential or admit the personal pull. The cost of integrity pressed, a potential mark on her record, reassignment from the field, the canine bond severed by desk duty. Outside, a patrol's footsteps crunched past, radios murmuring coordinates. Harlan's warning echoed. Emotions cloud judgment, but the children's song replayed, a quiet rebellion against isolation. In the ranks, reform began with one soldier's stand, ripples challenging the rigid flow. Elena scratched Rex's ear, his warmth a vow unspoken. Tomorrow, she'd face the tribunal with the same resolve that had drawn her to the wire. The base lights dimmed to red. Another night in the unyielding cadence, where conscience tested the steel of duty. The morning of the formal review arrived under a pallid sky, the Hindu Kush's peaks shrouded in lingering mist that clung to the base like unspoken accusations. Captain Elena Vasquez rose at 0400, the tense zipper rasping as she stepped into the pre-dawn chill, her breath fogging the air. Rex stirred from his bedroll, padding silently to her side, his nose bumping her hand in quiet solidarity. She clipped his lead, the metal clasp clicking with finality, and led him through the dimly lit paths to the kennel. The enclosure's gate creaked open, straw crunching underfoot, and Rex settled with a soft whine, his eyes tracking her retreat. "I'll be back," she whispered, the words more vow than promise. The review convened in the command briefing room, a reinforced bunker buried under the admin block, its walls panelled in soundproofed plywood that muffled the outside world. Fluorescent strips hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows on the long table where Colonel Reyes, the battalion commander, sat flanked by Harlan and a JAG officer from Bagram. Ramirez stood at parade rest by the door, his uniform impeccable, while Elena entered alone, saluting sharply before taking the witness chair. The air smelled of stale coffee and printer ink, stacks of reports fanned out like evidence in a court-martial. "Captain Vasquez," Reyes began, his voice gravelly from years of field commands, fingers steepled over the audit file. "We've reviewed your logs. 3 unauthorized aid interactions, including medical supplies diverted without prior approval and personal exchanges at the clinic perimeter. Sergeant Major Harlan flags this as a pattern risking operational security." "Your statement?" Elena met his gaze, posture unyielding, the caduceus on her collar a steady glint. "Sir, each action was mission-aligned. The initial village splint stabilized a civilian injury, preventing potential escalation in a hot zone. The basin encounter treated fever cases to contain spread, documented as preventive med support. The clinic handoff built rapport with vetted refugees, facilitating smoother future ops. No intel compromised. All contacts were observed and logged post facto. Harlan interjected, sliding a tablet across the table, helmet cam footage from the fence line playing in muted tones. The children's voices faint, their hands through the wire, the bread exchanged. "Rapport doesn't justify protocol breaches, Captain. That singing, public display, drew squad attention. Whispers in the barracks now. The medics soft on locals. It erodes discipline. And the birthday detail, personal vulnerability, shared beyond the wire. Command policy prohibits it for a reason." Reyes nodded, reviewing the footage, the room silent save for the whir of the AC unit straining against the humidity. Elena's mind raced through the chain. Article 92 loomed, dereliction carrying reprimand or worse, loss of field status, separation from Rex, her career's quiet erosion. The drawings in her quarters felt miles away, their innocence weaponized here. Yet conscience held firm. Turning back would betray the trust those children had extended, a bridge for humanity in the Wadi's shadows. The JAG officer, a wiry major with wire-rimmed glasses, leaned in. "Context matters, Colonel. Aid protocols are evolving. Post-2020 directives emphasize civilian engagement for stability ops. Captain Vasquez's actions align with that intent, if not the letter. Recommend counseling over formal action, with mandatory logging reforms." Reyes considered, his pen tapping the table's edge, the rhythm echoing like a metronome. "Agreed. No charges, but a letter of concern in your file, Vasquez. And a directive. Propose a standardized rapport protocol for your detachment. Harlan, oversee implementation. Dismissed." Eleanor saluted and exited, the bunker's door sealing behind her with a pneumatic hiss. The corridor outside buzzed with base activity, radios crackling coordinates, boots echoing on concrete. Ramirez caught up, falling in step. "Close call. The JAG pulled for you, saw the bigger picture, but Harlan's watching. That protocol idea, make it ironclad." "Affirmative, sir," Eleanor replied, her voice steady despite the adrenaline's ebb. Relief mingled with resolve. The review had exposed the fractures, but also the potential for quiet reform. She collected Rex from the kennel, his tail thumping against the gate as she unlatched it. The run smelled of fresh hay, damp from the night's dew, and Rex pressed against her leg, his warmth cutting through the morning's tension. Word of the review filtered through the platoon by midday chow, nods and murmurs in the mess tent where steam rose from vats of stew and flatbread. A private from her squad, the one who'd lingered at the bay door, approached her tray. "I heard you stood your ground, ma'am. Those kids, they got heart, like you." Elena met his eyes briefly, a subtle acknowledgement, before focusing on her meal. Loyalty rippled outward, subtle gestures challenging the old guard's rigidity. Afternoon brought the task. Drafting the protocol in the medical bay, Eleanor at her desk amid shelves of gauze and syringes, Rex dozing underfoot. Her laptop screen glowed with bullet points, pre-approval checklists for aid, witness logs for interactions, guidelines for personal boundaries. The words flowed with procedural precision, but woven in was compassion's thread. Metrics for impact, like reduced civilian unrest in patrolled sectors. She keyed the final line, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat, then emailed it to Harlan with a cover memo. "Recommendation for enhanced engagement, sir. Stability through trust." Harlan's response pinged within the hour. "Review in morning. Solid framework. Adjust for command sign-off." No praise, but the tone lacked bite. Perhaps the review had shifted his calculus, recognizing the value in her approach. As dusk settled, painting the tents in ochre hues, Elena walked Rex along the perimeter fence, the wire humming faintly under the wind's caress. Distant mountains loomed, their slopes etched with goat trails, where villages clung like secrets. The base's routine enveloped them. Guard towers silhouetted, a helicopter's rotors chopping the air in the distance. The letter of concern would linger, a scar on her record. But the protocol could mend broader wounds, extending her choice's reach. In the quiet, Rex alerted, nose lifting to a faint scent on the breeze, perhaps the clinic's direction, carrying echoes of children's laughter. Eleanor scratched his ears, the bond a silent affirmation. Integrity's cost was scrutiny, but its legacy was reform. One medic's stand, rippling through the ranks, challenging the system to bend toward justice without breaking. Tomorrow's sign-off loomed, another test in the unyielding cadence of duty. If this story already has your respect, hit the like button. It helps the story of Elena Vasquez reach those who still believe in honor. The sun crested the jagged ridgeline at precisely 0600 hours, bathing the forward operating base in a golden wash that chased away the night's chill. Captain Elena Vasquez stood at the edge of the motor pool, her boots planted firmly on the dew-slicked gravel. Rex at her heel with his ears perked to the awakening hum of the camp. Generators thrummed to life, their low growl mingling with the distant call of a muezzin from the valley below, while soldiers emerged from tents, collars buttoned against the crisp air. The protocol draft she'd submitted the previous evening weighed on her mind like an unspent round, precise, procedural, yet laced with the subtle advocacy for compassion that had defined her recent choices. Harlan's summons came via radio as she filled Rex's water bowl in the kennel, the metal dish clinking against the concrete. "Vasquez, report to ops. Bring your notes." His voice crackled with the morning's static, devoid of inflection, but Elena detected the undercurrent of evaluation. She latched the enclosure, Rex's nose pressing through the wire in a brief nudge of farewell, and made her way to the tent. The path lined with stacked crates of rations that smelled faintly of preserved fruit and salt. Inside, the air hung heavy with the scent of fresh-brewed coffee from a percolator on the side table. Colonel Reyes occupied the head seat, his reading glasses perched low on his nose as he scanned the printed pages of her proposal. Harlan stood to his right, arms folded, while Ramirez leaned against a map stand, the red-lined charts of patrol routes fluttering slightly in the draft from the flap. "Captain," Reyes said without looking up, his pen underscoring a section on rapport metrics. "Your framework's comprehensive. pre-approvals for aid diversions, witness logs for civilian contacts, and impact assessments tied to operational stability. It's forward-thinking, aligns with the new directives from CENTCOM on counterinsurgency through engagement. Elena stood at attention, her salute crisp. "Thank you, sir. The goal is to formalize judgment calls without stifling response to immediate needs." Harlan shifted, his boots scuffing the packed dirt floor, but he offered no rebuttal. Perhaps the review's outcome had tempered his skepticism, or the JAG's input had underscored the value in adaptation. Reyes removed his glasses, folding them deliberately. Approved with amendments, all protocols route through platoon leads for sign-off and quarterly audits by JAG. Implement across the battalion's medical detachments. Harlan, integrate it into training cycles. Vasquez, you'll brief the first session next week. He slid the document back, the pages whispering against the wood. This isn't leniency, it's evolution. Your action sparked it, but the chain demands accountability. Dismissed. The words landed with quiet finality, a ripple through the rigid hierarchy that Elena had tested. As she exited, Ramirez fell in beside her, his steps matching hers on the path to the medical bay. "You pulled it off," Harlan grumbled, but even he saw the merit. Fewer grey areas mean fewer breaches. The kids at the clinic, their trust paid off. Elena nodded, the weight in her chest easing to a steady resolve. The letter of concern remained in her file, a faint scar, but this directive transformed it into a catalyst, her integrity etching a path for others. Word of the approval spread through the morning briefings like radio chatter, subtle nods in the chow line, a private murmuring, "Well done, Mom," as she passed the armory. The platoon adapted quickly. By afternoon PT, Harlan incorporated a module on civilian engagement scenarios, his whistle piercing the air as squads rotated through mock interactions under the relentless sun. Elena led one group, Rex demonstrating alert postures at her command, his bark echoing off the perimeter fence. "Assess, log, engage," she instructed, her voice carrying the disciplined cadence of experience. The soldiers listened, their sweat-streaked faces attentive, the exercise bridging protocol with the human elements she'd championed. As the day waned, the base settled into its evening rhythm, mess tents filling with the clatter of utensils, floodlights humming to life along the wire. Elena returned to her quarters, the canvas flap rustling in the breeze that carried hints of pine from the hills. Rex joined her there, released from the kennel for the off-duty hours, his paws padding softly across the floor as he curled near her cot. She unpacked the drawings from her footlocker, spreading them on the rough-hewn table under the tactical lamp's glow. The stick figures, the uneven, happy day, now symbols of a legacy unfolding. A knock at the flap interrupted her reverie. Ramirez entered, holding a small parcel wrapped in olive-drab cloth. "From the squad," he said, placing it down. "Quiet collection, no fanfare. And this came via the clinic runner." He handed over a sealed envelope, postmarked from the aid network. Inside was a note from the young woman, translated by Singh earlier. "The children send drawings and a song for your day. The protocol reaches us. More help now. Blessings." Attached were new sketches, vibrant with crayons scavenged from supplies. Elena and Rex amid a circle of smiling faces, a makeshift cake outlined in blue. Elena unfolded the cloth parcel, a simple field cake, ration mix baked in the mess oven, topped with a single candle fashioned from a wax plug. The squad had marked her birthday after all, inspired by the whispers of her stand, discreet, disciplined, a gesture of shared humanity within the ranks. She lit the candle with a Zippo's flint strike, the flame flickering in the dim space. Rex watching with tilted head. "To reform," she murmured, blowing it out, the smoke curling like a vow. That evening, during the platoon wind-down in the rec tent, Harlan approached her table, a rare pause in his stride. "Your brief next week. Make it count, Vasquez. This protocol could set a standard for the division." His tone held grudging respect. The old guard yielding to the evidence of progress. Elena saluted informally, the exchange sealing her role as mentor, her choices rippling beyond the wire to reshape the institution's core. In the days that followed, the protocol took root. Aid runs to the clinic increased under structured logs, the children's families gaining stable access to meds and vaccines. Elena's interactions became models, brief, documented, effective, earning quiet emulation from other medics. Her birthday, once erased by duty, endured as a pivot, a symbol of moral strength that taught the system compassion's strategic value, loyalty's quiet power. Through the unyielding cadence of deployment, one soldier's conscience proved that integrity, forged in silence, could bend the steel of command toward justice. Subscribe for more stories of loyalty, courage, and justice within the ranks. Thank you for watching the case of She Never Celebrated Her Own Birthday until the children she rescued planned one for her. See you in the next one.